unknown stretches of the eastern Sahara beginning in the late 1920s. In 1926, he motored the 1,350 miles from Cairo to Khartoum, among the earliest efforts to tame the Nile basin by automobile. That trip at least had the advantage of a river to follow, and river towns along the way. 3 years later, Almashi ventured by car, far more daringly, across a long stretch of the Darb el Arbain, following the ancient caravan route from Salima in western Sudan to the southern Egyptian oasis at Karga. The rugged Gilf Kabir Plateau, its name translates as Great Barrier, was slower to yield its secrets. The plateau is both massive, a sandstone outcropping the size of Puerto Rico, rising nearly 1,000 feet above the desert floor, and massively remote. So far as is known, its existence was never mapped until early in the 20th century, when it was discovered by two of Egypt's most famous desert explorers, Ahmed Hassanein, who would later serve as chamberlain to King Farouk, and Prince Kamal el-Din Hussein, son of the Egyptian Sultan Hussein Kamel. Note: Hassanein was a multi-talented man. He competed for Egypt in the épée and foil events in the 1920 and 1924 Olympics. Endnote. The western side of the plateau was particularly forbidding, unseen by European eyes until the early 1930s, when Almashi and 23-year-old Englishman Sir Robert Clayton East Clayton, the 9th Baronet of Marden, mounted a joint attack. Almashi would lead a fleet of automobiles across the desert, while Clayton handled reconnaissance overhead in his lightweight, single-engine de Havilland Gypsy Moth airplane. Flying low over the plateau, Clayton was able to pick out a promising, nearly hidden valley, but neither he nor Almashi on the ground below could find a way to ascend the abrupt plateau. And with fuel running low for both ground and air explorations, the party gave up and retreated to Cairo. Robert Clayton would never complete the mission. He died of polio soon after returning to England. In the end, it was Almashi, Patrick Clayton, no relation to the baronet, and several others who became the first Westerners to enter the valley and explore its caves. The first also to realize that they had stumbled upon a treasure trove of primitive ancient art. To Patrick Clayton goes credit for discovering the so-called Giraffe Rock, rich with paintings of the long-necked mammals. Other caves featured archers, cattle, and female figures. So plentiful were the figures that the site quickly became known as Wadi Sura, roughly valley or dry riverbed of the pictures. Laszlo Almashi, though, won the big prize, or at least the most inexplicable. In October 1933, he scrambled up some boulders, poked his head inside a previously unexplored cave 14 meters by 8 meters wide, and there, floating effortlessly on the rock wall, were multiple painted figures who gave every indication of being caught mid-stroke, doing some highly relaxed version of the old-fashioned doggy paddle. Almashi had found the cave of the swimmers, but the swimmers themselves posed far more questions than answers. The archers, the cattle, the female and other human figures were basically predictable. As daunting as the Sahara was, it was not uninhabited. Nomads had been crossing the sand for millennia. Ancient caravan routes, like the one Almashi had traveled by car in 1929, were well established. Camels, by the thousands, herded and wild, could still be found among the dunes and vast empty spaces. But swimmers? Swimming implied more than ground moisture and sufficient rain to sustain grasses for grazing. Swimmers conjured up water in depth and quantity. The pictographs suggest that the bone-dry riverbeds that crisscrossed the Gilf Plateau, Wadi Sura and 9 others, had once fed lakes that had not only been swimmable, but actually swum. What did it all mean? Laszlo Almashi attempted to provide the answer in a little-read